Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Made Easy for HR Consultants with me, Nick Paninsky. Today, I've got a special guest with me. She has followed Marketing 101 advice and she has chosen a niche and she has excelled because of it. So welcome, June Hogan.
Oh, hi, Nick. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for joining me. It's yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, so it's great to finally have you here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Excellent. So, June, give us a quick elevator pitch for those, for those at home listening along who don't know who you are. Yeah, elevator pitch. Introduce yourself.
Oh, right. Here we go. So I'm June Hogan and I'm a career coach and an outplacement specialist. But I didn't always do this work. I've only been doing it for the last 5 years. So I've got a 25-year career in HR. So that's my background.
Yeah.
And I started out, I like to say the late 90s, but I think it was the mid 90s. And I started out in HR in a large automotive manufacturer, graduate. I progressed super quickly through the organization. I became a senior manager, the youngest senior manager in the organization. Life was going really quite well. I was super proud of myself.
Nice.
And then the company went into administration and I lost my job overnight, along with thousands of other people.
Wow.
That was my first experience of redundancy. And I was about 30 years old and it was a big shock. I had a huge mortgage. I had a young baby and all of that stuff. So I spent 18 months out of work. So I didn't have any support. The company gone into administration. There was no money. There was no support. There was no nothing. And during that time, I had a baby, which was lovely. But I was also diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, which I had to then deal with that as well as deal with trying to find another job. So it's a really tough time in my life. I did find another role and I went on to be a HR business partner for Wolseley, who were the leading supplier of plumbing and heating products across the world. And I had experience of redundancy, managing redundancies. And then I was also made redundant for the second time whilst I was on maternity leave. So 2 experiences of redundancy. That's just how life goes. And after the second experience, I took a bit of time out and then we had an opportunity to go and live overseas in North America as a family. And I couldn't work at that point. So I did have a job that I'd been doing some consultancy work and really enjoyed that. And I had to give that up. So I spent 3 years there, decided to train to be a coach because I couldn't work and I've always worked and I wanted to use my brain. And then when I came back to the UK, I was faced with a choice that I either go back into employment. And I've been fortunate to have worked part-time for most of my sort of career when my children were small. And there weren't any part-time jobs that were of any at the same sort of level that I would have wanted. So I thought, right, now or never, give self-employment a go. And when I look back now, the way that I went about it was not the way I'd recommend anyone to do that.
Let's talk about that briefly.
It didn't work out, yeah. So I was completely naive. So I thought, oh, here's me coming back from the US. I was nowhere on social media. You couldn't find me anywhere. I didn't even have a Facebook page. Nothing.
Wow.
And I just thought people would know me. People would come and find me. Surely that's how it works, isn't it?
Right. If you go self-employed, they will find you. What is it they say in Field of Dreams?
Yeah, surely that's how it works.
Yeah.
It didn't work like that.
No.
So I probably spent about 9 months not really knowing what I was supposed to be doing. So I'd got this HR generalist background, I'd got this coaching qualification, and I was just dabbling in too many different things. It's like, well, do I want to be a HR generalist? Maybe I should just put myself out there as a coach. But what sort of coach did I want to be? And it was really, really kind of confusing. And I didn't earn a single penny for about 6 months.
Wow.
Not a great start.
Okay.
And so that was that. But the defining moment, and I can remember exactly where I was. So I joined a group program just to get some advice and some support on how to navigate this life of self-employment. And it was specifically for HR consultants, but very similar to what you do. And I've been starting to do some kind of more outplacement related work. So I've been getting some referrals for interview coaching. I've been working with a few people who have been made redundant. And I was thinking, maybe this is a thing for me. And importantly, I was reflecting on where I'd come from and my experiences. And I hadn't really done that before. And I was just piecing it all together. Now it all makes sense. Now that I'm talking to you 5 years on, but back then, nothing. I'm being really open and honest about it. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And the person I was working with said, "Well, how about giving our placement a go? You know, you can do it for 3 months. And if it doesn't work out, you can just do something different."
Mm.
And as they pointed out, they're like, "Nobody will notice, and probably nobody will care." I know this sounds
so
harsh.
true. So true.
Yeah. So that's what I decided to do. I thought, right, I'll do that. And that was in the summer. So I remember where I was when it happened. And that was 2019. So none of us knew obviously what was around the corner in 2020. And niching as it was then, I guess did I realize I was niching? Yeah, probably did. And it completely changed my business, completely changed everything about what I did.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just before we talk about that, you know, what that world then started to look like, I want to talk a little bit about how, you know, you were a coach, you were a consultant, you know, you didn't really know what you were doing, and you didn't really know, I guess, did it feel, this is a leading question, did it feel a bit overwhelming?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I knew loads about HR. I've been doing it for 25 years. And you know, I knew enough about coaching. I was qualified. I'd got, you know, hours under my belt and all the rest of it. But I had not the first clue about marketing. I had to set myself up on LinkedIn. I remember posting my very first post. Literally, I was like filled with dread. What will people think? Will anyone even read it? What am I even doing? Who am I to post this? You know, all of that. Finance, I hadn't got the first clue about, you know, setting myself up as I did understand the difference between sole trader and limited company, that kind of thing, but, you know, I didn't know the detail of it. So as somebody who was, you know, a professional, and I do regard myself as a HR professional, and I still do to a certain extent, even though I've been working in one of the specific areas, I felt totally lost when it came to anything to do with running a business. Yeah.
I can completely understand. You know, when I went self-employed the first time, I was a copywriter. I would work with, and then that presented itself with all those different kinds of problems, because it was so very general, and it felt overwhelming. Like, you know, where do I find clients? What do I do? How do I do this?
Yeah.
And because you've not made any decisions in the right places, it does feel overwhelming, because it's an open book. You've got the whole world to deal with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it can also feel isolating, and it can feel lonely, and social media can make it feel like everyone else is doing really well. And, you know, why are you not doing well? And so social media has its benefits to growing a business, but it can also be, you'll have to approach it with caution, particularly when you're in those early days. That phrase of like compare and despair, like you literally have to get your mind out.
100% with you on that one. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, love that phrase as well.
Yeah. Okay, so you worked with this coach, wasn't me, but you know, this was 5 years ago, so I wasn't even on the scene. I was still working in HR.
Oh, there you go then.
Yeah. But okay, so then you worked with this coach. You decided you would explore being an outplacement, you know, specialist. Basically, you chose a niche. So how did things change for you?
Well, all of a sudden, and you know, I didn't have a lot of money to invest in support. So I was on a group program, and again, you know, it was great, and it did what it needed to. But I was like, right, off you go then, kind of thing. You know, the program finished, and I'm off. So the difference that it made to me was that all of a sudden I knew who I wanted to work with. So I kind of, this ideal client persona, I was really clear on who that person was. And I was also clear on the problem I was helping them to solve, or the problem helping them fix. And that really changed, because it just gave me a focus, and I was no longer feeling like I was all over the place. And it didn't mean to say that, and in fact, during that time, people would still come to me, don't get me wrong, I wasn't overwhelmed, and say, you know, could you come and do this investigation, or could you come and help us with this policy or whatever? And I would turn that work away, because I'm like, no, this is what I'm doing now. So it didn't stop people still coming to me for the thing I used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And had I wanted to do it, I would have done it. But yeah, it made life just so much easier. And so I was able to go out on social media, and again, I didn't pay for any support or anything like that. I did it all myself, and have that client voice in my head. I knew who I wanted to speak to and who I wanted to reach, and yeah, it just made life a whole lot easier. And I posted recently, actually, Terry Wogan, who I used to love listening to when I was
Terry Wogan.
used to love his show. He would say that he would only ever speak to one listener. He wasn't trying to speak to all of millions of people listening to him. And I think it's so true that you just try and speak to one person, and it can make your life a lot easier.
Yes, and once you know who that person is, and as you say, what problem you're solving and what world they want to live in, as you say, it changes everything. You know what you're supposed to be saying. That focus.
Yeah.
So what happened with your business then? So you've got this focus, you know who you're talking to, you've got this niche. What happens next?
So I found that I was showing up on LinkedIn a lot more. So for someone who didn't have a social media profile 12 months before, nowhere, I found confidence in showing up on LinkedIn. So I understood my boundaries and what I would and wouldn't post about, but it just made it a lot easier for me to write posts and to connect. It made it easier for me to develop my audience, so making my connections and spending some time doing that. So I was relatively sort of methodical and quite committed to sending those connection requests so that my audience, because the LinkedIn algorithm is a law unto itself, so who knows who's going to see your post. But I was hopefully increasing my chances of my ideal client picking up my post. So that was helpful. And I was really able to just focus my attention on the services that I wanted to offer. How was I going to package those up, and how would that be helpful? So it just brought a lot of clarity to what I was able to spend my time doing, and to feel like I had a purpose almost, because I could sort of start to see this business developing in its very, very embryonic stages. It was starting to become a business, whereas before it was just, I didn't even know what it was. It was just a jumble of ideas.
Yeah. No, I can completely understand, because, for me, when I decided to not leave the copywriting world behind, but I moved more into a bit more of a holistic marketing and sales area, I started off with business consultants, and it felt so vague. That is just a huge market. And I thought, oh yeah, huge market, great. But it makes it so much more difficult because there's so many of them, and they all have different kinds of problems. And then, as you say, when you're looking on LinkedIn, to find these people, to add them to your network, to then have them popping up in your fields, in your feed, so that you can pop up in their feed, etc., makes it so much more difficult. But when I niched down into HR consultants, changed everything. Now my feed on LinkedIn is HR consultants. Makes it so much easier to just click like, add comments, whatever else. It's changed everything. That focus makes everything so much easier.
And also, I think it helps you to feel connected. So, we all need our tribes, don't we? And so I feel like there's a tribe on LinkedIn. I have some lovely people who are probably, or haven't met, and maybe never will meet, who will support me on LinkedIn, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I'll return that as well. And so you feel like you feel like kind of like you belong in that particular community. And then there are other communities, which is how we met. You kind of off this on social on Facebook, for example. There are certain, when you might want to go and do face-to-face things, you can pick and choose which ones you might want to go to, thinking about, is that my community? Is that my tribe? Will I be able to make some nice connections? And I don't go to these things thinking, will I get any business? Because invariably, probably I don't, and that doesn't matter. But it's about connecting, and showing up.
Spending your time wisely. Like you say, turning up to these things face to face. I came along to the HRI conference.
Yes, we had shared a table, didn't we?
We did share a table. I won a prize from you as well.
You did, yeah.
And then, back in November, I went to the CIPD conference. Now, why do I do these things? Because I know my audience is there.
Yeah.
And it's, if I'd stayed with business consultants, Jesus, where the hell would I go to see these people?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And then all of that then can feed into your website. My website wasn't, I say use the word professional, it wasn't professionally done until last year. It's a big investment in a website. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of money. But despite that, I was able to make my website relatively specific and talk about certain things.
Yes.
I'm not into, I don't know, SEO. It seems like a kind of a dark art, but I'm assured that you can then, use the SEO engines, and people probably what she's talking about. But again, if you've got a specific audience you're trying to reach and you've got some specific keywords and all that good stuff. So it feeds into that, and it feeds into, if you want to grow your email list, again, okay, so what kind of a lead magnet do you want to offer to these people to get them on your list? What's going to be of interest to them? Do you understand, again, their pain point and therefore what they're going to want? So it's just like that golden thread that runs through everything.
Yes.
That makes
Love that
life
phrase.
a lot easier.
Yes. For those of you listening along at home who may think that I've coached June into what to say.
Oh no, I'm not being paid. It's just literally coming out of my mouth. I'm hoping it's making sense.
No, it's 100% making sense. It's the exact same things that I talk about. Your website should be somewhere where your ideal client, your niche, can get onto and say, I'm in the right place to have my problems sorted. If you work with accountants and there are pictures of accountants on your website, they'll be like, okay, I'm engaged now. What else have you got for me? But if accountants click on your website and see pictures of farmyard animals, they're like, not for me. And they're going to click off. They're never to return again. And it's the same with the lead magnet. If the lead magnet solves their problems, if the images, if the copy speaks to them, they will become more and more into your world. It's tentative steps, but they are making that progress. But if your copy, if your images don't speak to them, they will click away.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because we're all, even when we're not working, we're looking for stuff online. And if you land, and I'm the same, I'm like, oh, I don't even know if this is for me. It's you haven't got much time for people to make that decision, have you? And one of the things I wish I had done was to start an email list a lot sooner. I only started that last year. So if anyone's listening, they're in the early stages. It doesn't, MailChimp or MailerLite or whatever else is out there, they're not particularly expensive. Certainly when you've only got, a few people. I think they might even be free if you've only got a few people.
They are,
aren't they? Yeah. And I would encourage anyone to start that. So find a lead magnet, find a way to get them on your list for whatever reason, or when you go to networking. But it's nice to have a community that isn't on social media. And there's lots of mind-bending stuff involved in setting up an email list, because inside those systems, it is pretty tricky. But again, if you can invest in some help, that's something I think that's the one thing I regret, is not doing that earlier. So
excellent. I love that, because that was literally about to be my question. What would you have done differently? What would your advice be to those listening along at home? So, I guess you've already answered the question of what you would do differently.
Yeah, so I would.
Is there anything else?
I would have paid more attention to email. I just think I had a block with it and thought, oh, it looks really complicated. And how am I going to write to people? What am I going to say? Because I'm the kind of person that if I say I'm going to do something, I follow through with it. So knowing that I couldn't just start it and then it just go dusty, and So yeah. In fact, I did dabble with it for a while, and then just had to give it up. So I would definitely do that. And one thing I wouldn't do, and I didn't do this, but I could see how some people might get sucked into that. And apologies for website designers that might be listening, but I built my business without a professional website. I had a presence, but it was a WordPress one that I kind of did myself, and didn't have any professional help. So websites can be expensive. You can get some really good cheap options now, some nice, they look good, and then they're not hugely expensive. So I recommend that if you've got some money to invest, but I wouldn't be held back by, I can't set myself up in business yet because I don't have a fancy website. If you've got a presence on LinkedIn, you've got a way for people to contact you, then that can be enough. And the way I built my business was through showing up on LinkedIn and through making connections and developing my tribe and my community. And as we said at the start, being known to solve a specific problem. So yeah, those are the two things that I'll just give people some reflections on.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. I think as well, like I would agree with you that a website isn't necessarily necessary for you to go into business. It is helpful, because then someone can, as we said, they can click onto it, find out more information, opt in or opt out. But it shouldn't be a blocker, if you've got that LinkedIn presence, it's just a way of, it's your presence, it's your spot in the world. And it is a place where you can have your lead magnet and your email account and all that stuff. So yeah, I guess that would be my thoughts on the websites. So yeah, any advice for those listening along at home?
I do get that niching can feel scary. So I've got friends that I work with that are in my community, and some of them haven't niched because they just don't want to. The thought of niching is just too frightening around, well, I'll close off opportunities for other things. But on the weekend, I was chatting with somebody who's a friend, and they asked me for a recommendation for somebody who does a very specific service because they needed some support in their global business for this really specific service. And she said to me, do you know anybody? And straight away, because this person had showed up and I knew exactly what they did, and I could, and I know them anyway from groups that we've been in together, it was really easy for me to make that recommendation. And I love making those referrals as well, because I'm always very grateful when people do it for me. So I think that kind of really underpins what the power of being really specific. Now, I know that this person does other work as well. They don't just specialize in one area. And in fact, when you go to their website, you can see a few other services. It's very specific about what they do, and the website's really nicely laid out, very kind of clear. But I knew them for that particular thing, and that particular pain point was what my friend was asking about. And so it's just easy for people to join the dots. And if, like I said at the start, you do it for 3 months. I think 3 months is I don't know if you'd agree, it's enough time to see if you can make a go of something. If you say I'm going to do it for a week, obviously too short. A month, maybe not, you can't get the traction. But if you say I'm going to do this for 3 months, and at 3 months I'm going to review it, see what's worked, see if I want to carry on, you can literally change your mind. Unless you've invested £10,000 in a website that says, I'm an investigator and that's all I do. So going back to your point about the website and some of these other things that might require a bit more investment, maybe during that initial, I'm going to niche, see how I get on. You might not want to narrow things down too much in terms of investment around those things. But you can change your mind because you're the business owner, you're in charge. You call the shots.
Yes, I like that.
That's pivot or whatever the phrase
good
is.
Advice. You can change your mind. You're not set in stone. It's not forever. No. So yeah, unless it works, in which case,
cool. Yeah, and to be
down.
fair, there are things that I do, and I'm thinking about certain little tweaks. So I love what I do, and I really enjoy it, and I find it rewarding, and it's really valuable work. But I can make some tweaks, and I can make some changes, and I can try other things if I want to, because that's within my gift. Some of those things might not work, but I can still come back to the core of what I do, which is the niche that I found.
Yes, 100%. I think that is a great piece of advice, is that people worry when they niche, they won't be able to do other work, or other people will, opt out of them as such. And that can happen. But when, if somebody comes to you and says, can you help with X, Y, Z, and that isn't in your niche, but you want to do it, you're the business owner. Go nuts, go and do it if you want to do it. There's no one stopping you. So, I have clients who aren't HR consultants. I do work that isn't marketing and sales. I've got a client right now who I'm doing copywriting work for. Back to my roots. So, if the opportunity presents itself and you want to do it, just because you have niche doesn't mean, it's this weight around your neck that you have to commit to. No,
definitely. And when you're thinking about where to invest your time, where to invest your money, thinking about how to develop your skills, all of these things, you come back to your niche and you focus on this is where I want to gain deep expertise, or this is how I want to develop. But again, if other things are complementary, then it doesn't stop you doing them. But you kind of know what that core is. You know what that, I know we said before, gold thread, or that stick of rock that runs through your business. Like if you cut your business in half, this is what it's about. This is what I'm about. But yeah, you've still got that flexibility. So it can feel maybe daunting and a bit restrictive. But at the end of the day, you're the business owner. So as you say, you can make those decisions. And I know some coaches who have niched, maybe not as specifically as me, but that they do have a niche. They do have a target of people that they want to work with. And they do HR consultancy to just prop that up, to have a level of stability. So yeah, there's still an opportunity to do things like that.
Love it. Okay, well, I don't have any other questions for you, June. You've been a perfect guest.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear, especially if you're not going to cut that bit out, are you? When we put it on the airwaves, no?
No, I'll stand by it publicly. No problem with that whatsoever.
Oh, well, thank you, Nick. Time's gone super quickly.
It has, right?
Yeah, it's nice having a chat. So
yeah, that's exactly it. It's just having a chat and exploring your world and listening to your story and then sharing advice for people, because ultimately not everyone is where you are, right? They want to get there, successful business, an expert in their field takes time and effort, right?
Yeah, and just hopefully this session has maybe sparked some ideas or got people thinking. And thank you for inviting me along to share this with you, because when I reflect on the me, and I can literally picture the me sitting at my desk thinking, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? I really don't know. I'd love to have just podcast 5 years ago. I think they were just kind of emerging, weren't they? So maybe not so much. So I think these sessions are great. They're just nice bite size dog walk kind of commute on the bus, whatever you do with them in the car. So
yes. Yes, perfect. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your learnings. It's great that you found time for me and for everyone at home.
No, you're very welcome.
All right, perfect. Well, hopefully for those listening along at home, this has been an entertaining and educational podcast for you. And in the meantime, we're going to sign off. Thank you for listening along. In the meantime, get marketing, because without marketing, there's no sales. And without sales, there's no business. So get marketing.